One. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Small Screen Star Wars. I'm Julian Mush, and I am joined by my co-host from the Tower Babel podcast, Daniel D'Souza.
What's up?
And returning from our recaps from the Clone Wars on this side, is Rachel Wilkinson. Hello, how are you?
Oh, hi. Good, thank you.
Good. That's good. I'm glad to hear you're well.
Yeah.
And you didn't need to say that. So we are going to be recapping and covering The Mandalorian Season 2. We did a recap of the first season. You can go back into the archives, find that there. We also did a recap of the last season of The Clone Wars, Season 7. You can also find that in the archives as well. And you can actually head over to towerbabble.ca and find everything that we do, including our flagship show, the Tower Babble podcast, where we cover general film and television news. And we actually have a new episode in the hopper. I have the wave files ready to edit.
In the hopper.
In the hopper.
It's a new term.
On the deck.
Okay.
On deck, right? Ready to drop, where we talk about a lot of Marvel and DC stuff. Some Snyder Cut. There's seemingly always Snyder Cut news every single time we talk. So that's there, as well as another perennial topic that we seem to always cover is the seemingly the death of film of theatrical film going. So we cover that as well a little bit, seemingly also every month. Thank you, COVID. So if you want to check that out, that super positive.
Sounds enticing,
very
doesn't
exciting, right? You can find that also at towerbabble.ca. Please follow us on on Twitter at TowerBabblecast on Twitter, where you're going to be able to get notifications when we go live. Because this show, Dan, I don't know if you know this, we're actually live right now.
I did know that.
Okay, good. That's good to know. Rachel, did you know?
I assumed. Yeah.
Okay, good. That's good. So we are live. We're on YouTube, we're on Periscope, and we are on Twitch. So you can find us on all of those streaming platforms, and you actually go back and look at some of the previous episodes, including some After Dark episodes where we have a little bit of post-episode action that you can find in those, only exclusively on those platforms. So you can check that out there. And we have a question from Marcos, friend of the show. Marcos, when can we expect both of these to drop? How's it going, as always? Marcos, that's a great question. I'm hoping to have this episode out tomorrow, and then I will be dropping the full TOB podcast episode later in the week. So you can stay tuned for that. This is the 1st of November that we're recording this on. Okay, with that all out of the way, I should mention before we just get into that, I should mention one last thing. The Patreon, we do have a Patreon to help support the show. If you want to keep the show going, if you appreciate what we're doing, you can head over to patreon.com/TowerBabblecast and drop us $5 a month. We'll get you access to our film club. This month, Daniel, what movie are we doing?
This month, we're doing Coherence. We went with a sci-fi theme, and it's a relatively recent sci-fi movie that I think everybody should watch.
Do you think Star Wars fans would appreciate a film like Coherence?
Some will. I'm sure some will. There's not a lot of crossover between Star Wars and Coherence. It's a different type of sci-fi, but if you like sci-fi in general, you'll probably like this movie. I highly recommend it. And again, and then that's just some bonus content for those subscribers, but it does help keep the show on, the lights on, the literal actual lights on, so we appreciate that. And again, that's patreon.com/TowerBabble. Hey, are you laughing at us?
No, I just, I kind of forgot I was here for a second.
Just looking at your Bulbasaur costume and thinking, man, that is cute.
It is adorable, okay?
Let's get into the actual meat of the show. And guys, I am super excited to talk about The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, Chapter 9.
Same.
The Marshal. Because I think it was an amazing episode of television, like really top-notch, really high quality, not just television, but also really great Star Wars. And that's not always true with Star Wars content. You can have Star Wars stuff that's not always great Star Wars. This was. So I'm excited to discuss that and get into it. This episode, I believe, was directed by Dave Filoni. I will have to... no, I take that back. It wasn't Dave Filoni. It was... can't help me out here. Iron Man, Jon Favreau. It was directed by Jon Favreau, written by Jon Favreau, and I'll save kind of my overall thoughts for the end when we can kind of cover that. But I just think this episode is really well written. I just want to get that off the top. But before we get into everything, I just wanted to kind of recap a little bit of season 1, not like the actual events, but just get your guys' take on season 1, how you felt about it coming into season 2, and then just kind of set the stage and kind of set what the stakes are for season 2 before we kind of get into the meat of it. So, Rachel, I'll pass to you first. What were your overall thoughts of season 1 of The Mandalorian?
Of season 1?
Yes.
I loved it. Like, there's nothing that I didn't like about it. So,
so you didn't have any complaints, and I really only had a few. I think one of them, if I did have to say I had one nitpick, was that having watched and rewatched the season after watching what's it called, the Disney Gallery stuff, the behind the scenes stuff from season 1. I don't know if you guys have seen that stuff.
I have. It's really good.
They dive really deeply into the kind of the tech of the show, and I think the tech of the show, by the way, is the future of filmmaking in a lot of ways, and it's really exciting. What they do with the volume or the volume. I wrote the venue. Anyway, but it's really exciting stuff. But one thing that stood out to me in my rewatch of season 1 was how claustrophobic some of the shots felt. They did a lot of close-ups, a lot of medium shots, and it really felt like they were on a soundstage a lot of times, even when they were outdoors. And I think that was a restriction on the first season's budget a little bit.
Sure.
And so if I had that might be my only complaint of season 1, along with maybe episode length. I really felt like they didn't let episodes breathe enough. This episode for season 2 is already longer than any episode from the first season.
I did like that,
and I think it really helps the show. So if those were things that at least for me, that stood out. Dan, what did you think of season 1?
I largely agree with both of you. I did enjoy the show. The thing with season 1, I think it was more visual though than it was narrative. It lost track of the narrative throughout the middle of the season with a couple of episodes that were, for lack of a better term, procedural episodes. You know, they could have been either episode 6 or 5 or 7, and I don't actually know. Episodes that kind of took the audience away from the story of Baby Yoda and the stuff that we're kind of more interested in. That being said, I kind of like with this episode, I fully enjoyed it, and it was one of those episodes. This is a throwaway episode if you really think about it. There's no real story, like no real guts to it. It's just a day in the life of the Mandalorian.
Well, I'll save this for a little bit later. I think it has a lot of the best stuff from those middle episodes of season 1, those kind of middle things.
Yeah.
But it does still have some through lines into the larger quest that he's been set on. And let me just again set the stakes for season 2. His mission, as he's been quested by the armorer. By the way, I hope we see the armorer again this season. She is, I think something Swallow, I think is her, is the actress's name. I thought she did such a amazing job in the first season. I really hope we see her again. But she's quested Mando to return the child, to referred to as Baby Yoda, to his kind. He's attempting to find other Mandalorians to guide him. That's his first step of this mission, right? So we actually catch up with him, and maybe we can dive into that now. We'll just get right into it, and before we even talk about the first scene, the intro with the helmets has no change. I like to keep a track of these types of things. Okay. No change to the intro, and it's still skippable, even though it's only like I think 5 seconds. It's very short. So we actually catch up with the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, on some planet we don't know. We don't get a title card. We don't know the planet, but it looks like a Outer Rim kind of backwater type.
Sure. Seedy environment.
Definitely seedy. And it's at night, and we're given, like I said, no title card. There's lots of graffiti. One of the things that I noticed, I actually watched the virtual red carpet for The Mandalorian as well. So StarWars.com had a virtual red carpet event because they couldn't have a in-person live red carpet event. So they brought on the stars and the directors and the producers and stuff. They had conversations. It was nice. One of the things that they talked about, and I wish I remember who they credited, but they talked about how they had a lot of different creative people, different directors, artists come visit set, as you would if you were working next door to the set of the Star Wars show. You would want to stop in, see how things are going.
Of course.
So they had a couple different people pop in. One of them suggested, hey, why is there no graffiti in Star Wars? Like, what's the deal with that? And, Jon Favreau's response to that, which, by the way, I really have to, you feel like I'm crediting, you have to credit Dave Filoni for even giving Jon Favreau this stuff, and I'll preface this a little bit, but he basically said, well, there is in Rebels, you can see a lot of graffiti done by Sabine in Rebels. She literally has like spray paint and spray paint stuff. She paints her armor. It's cool, but you never see it in the movies. So they said, well, why not? So they filled these walls with graffiti, and I think it does have a really striking kind of look to it, along with obviously the glowing red eyes.
Yeah, I did see some people saying that it looked like kind of like Sabine's like artwork too.
Her style.
Yeah, her style.
I wonder if it's because that's the only reference point they have for graffiti in
Probably.
Star Wars, and they use that as kind of an example. I don't know.
It does help the world feel more lived in, especially with it being the Outer Rim and it being a seedy environment. It's surprising that there's less of that on Tatooine.
Yeah,
when you think about it, right?
Yeah,
or Nar Shaddaa or
any of
Coruscant.
Really. I guess at the lower levels, especially of Coruscant. But like, what I like is that it's not just random graffiti. There's just like callbacks to the Clone Wars in there. There's and looks like maybe a C-3PO-esque type droid in there as well. If you're looking closely, I do like this like glowing red eyes thing. They do it a lot in Star Wars, but like it's just so I think it's just like. Again, it makes the world feel more dangerous.
Probably too much.
There's a lot of eyes. Maybe they could have toned them down.
Like,
maybe
come on. Like, again, love the episode, but that's a really goofy segment where if this one light gets marginally dimmer, all of a sudden you're surrounded by ravenous.
They don't like light, Daniel. That's the.
You'd imagine if a planet existed like that, there would be some more safety precautions than a lamp, you know.
Yeah.
Sure, fair enough. In the like animated episodes, whether it's Clone Wars or Rebels, there is a creature with glowing yellow eyes. You see it a lot on an Axis. It's this kind of like cat-like creature. It's featured heavily in this first season of Rebels, but. Not this creature, but it does have that. It does evoke that at least a little bit for me. This is kind of this visual storytelling that's similar to that. Anyway, they enter a casino type-ish building. I don't know how would you describe it. Like just a fight, just an open hall. I don't know. Anyway, there's a fight going on with two Gamorreans. You might recognize Gamorreans as the guards for Jabba's palace, or the useless guards from Jabba's palace. That Luke actually force chokes. And no one really talks about that, but he
goes dark side on them.
Yeah, he force chokes them. And the Gamorreans look like just green troll-like creatures with like really big butts. Like it's really like their butts always look really weirdly large.
I've never noticed that.
Nor have I.
It's like
they're just like more telling.
They're
else.
Like they're triangular. Like so, like their hips are just really wide. Anyway, and there's a lot of callbacks here to Jabba's palace. I don't know if you've noticed a couple of them. One might be the male Twi'lek with his leku wrapped around his neck, which is very reminiscent of the male Twi'lek in Jabba's palace, who gets choked by that. I don't even remember the exact details of that. But there's that, as well as obviously the two Gamorreans who are fighting with vibroblades. And I did like, by the way, that they kept the vibroblades as a thing, because they did introduce the live action look for vibroblades in season 1 of The Mandalorian. They kept it here. Any thoughts on this scene before we kind of dive into kind of what really goes down? Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's very reminiscent of Jedi. One thing I noticed, and I don't know if this is deliberate or not, but in terms of like the choreography of those Gamorreans fighting, it was very reminiscent. Maybe it's the costumes,
right?
Maybe,
they're like restrictive.
They were acting the same way. These very like, you know, they were emphasizing certain motions, and
big
stuff like
motions, right? Yeah.
Maybe that's just people in costumes in general fighting, but that's something that I noticed.
But even if it wasn't that, I think. Obviously, the original version of those costumes were probably very very restrictive. So it creates a distinct style of movement for that type of alien. So that was carried through. They meet up with a one-eyed alien played by John Leguizamo, and his voice is very distinct. And I actually really like how they didn't do anything to just John Leguizamo's voice, and it felt very gangster, like underworld sounding to me. I thought that was pretty cool.
Did.
And apparently he knows where to find Mandalorians. We find out why in a moment. But the one line that I really liked here is that it's uncouth to talk business immediately, which I thought was a very, again, gangster style line where he just like turns to the thing. He's like, "Oh, my Gamorrean's not doing well."
Yeah.
Ease into it.
Right. You can't just jump right into
Start
it.
with small talk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then one of the questions he asked him is, he says, "Are you a gambling man, Mando?" And this all leads into basically a rigged bet, but it does play a larger kind of overarching story because you could argue that he makes a bet for Boba Fett's armor later in the episode. He bets on himself later in the episode. Apparently, so again, the rigged bet happens. He said, "I'll bet you that this Gamorrean will die in the next minute and a half, and if you take the bet, I will, in exchange for your armor, I'll tell you the information, whatever." And so he shoots him. He pulls out a gun, shoots him. Right. And okay, sorry, my bad. A blaster, and shoots him. And then he's got all these people around him, and then he's got guns drawn. We get to see what the heck are they called? The little like rockets that come out of his wrist, flying, whistling birds. I think that's right.
Yeah, whistling birds.
Yeah, and then we get a first look at Yoda or Baby Yoda doing his little like click the button, hide in his so pram cute. Thing, which is very cute.
Adorable.
I mean, Baby Yoda's adorable throughout this whole episode. He does not have a large role in this episode. He's basically just hanging out.
He's just featured for reaction shots.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We get to hear him like coo like a couple times, and that's about it. So this guy, John Leguizamo, is he really likes Beskar. That's his thing. He's been hunting down and killing Mandalorians for their armor, and he felt that the Mandalorian was kind enough to bring him his armor directly to him, which is nice of him to do, apparently. The Mando reacts. There's a fight scene. It's a pretty cool fight scene, to be honest, actually.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah,
he throws a dagger through. I can't remember what the species is for Maul, but he throws a dagger through one of their chests, which is pretty cool.
Dathomirian?
I think that's right. And and then he chases down John Leguizamo, does the whole magic like rope thing from his wrist because it always wraps around exactly what you need it to, and strings him up. Promises that he won't be killed by his hand, gets the information he needs, which is, by the way...
Very specific.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, very specific wording.
You should be worried when someone says that. And that... to be fair, technically he was still kind of killed by his hand. He strung him up there to die by those beasts, but that was just a tool.
He just strung him up. Whatever happens after that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Listen, man, I'm just gonna pull the trigger. I didn't actually put the bullet in you.
Yeah, you could have moved.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You had every opportunity.
It's flawed logic, but whatever. Apparently he finds out that there is one Mandalorian that he knows of on Tatooine. Mando's surprised. He felt he's spent a lot of time there. He's never seen a Mandalorian before. Neither have we, as an audience, have ever seen a Mandalorian on Tatooine, except for Boba Fett. So obviously, we're right away thinking Boba Fett. The show is right away asking you to think and say, when's the last time you saw someone wearing that kind of armor on Tatooine? And it's asking you to think of Return of the Jedi. By the way, we should turn that on. I forgot to turn that on. Turn the Jedi on in the background.
It's Empire, actually.
Sorry, yeah, you're right. Empire. No. Yeah, it's yes, Empire in honor of Boba Fett, which was first introduced to us, not technically in that movie, but in practicality.
Right.
Okay. Thoughts on this kind of intro scene?
I think it's a weird way to start the season, honestly. As much as I'm a fan of this episode and like I finished the episode being very much into Star Wars, more so than I have been in a long time. But I think it's a weird way. It almost feels like between the two seasons was more of like a mid-season break, and this is more of a continuation. I think that's emphasized by the fact that it's chapter 9 as
not season 1 episode.
Right, so it's just a continuation of the same story, and this does feel like, as enjoyable as it was, one of those filler episodes from the middle of a season, as opposed to a season opener, which I would hope would have involved more of like the Gideon stuff, right?
Sure, right, because that's never touched on.
Like
right?
This episode. Ultimately, I feel like didn't need the scenes from last time or scenes from last season, that little recap that they do. I don't think this episode needed that at all, because it didn't actually, none of those story beats were touched upon. It was just, like I said earlier, a day in the life of the Mandalorian.
Right.
So it is what it is. Other than that, great episode, but
it's pretty dark.
It shouldn't exist at the beginning.
Sure. I think I think it's emblematic of the fact that this show is maybe it's a statement. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it's saying we are going to go places that you might not expect. There's a dagger right through someone's heart in the first couple minutes. There's a guy eaten by. it's implied. We don't see it, but like that is a very dark implication that he strung him up to be eaten by whatever those creatures are. Yeah. So I think maybe that's what they're going for there is like, hey, tonally, this is going to be darker. This is going to be deeper. And I think we were touching on this the other day in the last episode of the TOB podcast, basically saying that when you get further into shows like this, they run now the second season, you're able to really kind of push limits in ways that you weren't able to do in the first season. It often aren't able to now that you kind of have built the world, established the characters. So there's that. Okay, so we go to Tatooine, and it is kind of revealed to us in a kind of this uplifting music as the kind of the theme song for The Mandalorian plays. He lands at Mos Eisley. We see kind of the bantha and sand, the sand person, which I guess is slang. It's good.
The Tusken Raider.
The Tusken Raider. Yeah. And obviously, which is a little bit foreshadowing for later in the episode. He lands at the same port as season 1, and the lady there remembers him. I wish I remember her name. I don't even know if they necessarily gave her name.
She has a name. I don't remember what it is though.
Yeah, and I feel bad because actually I like her. She's actually like a fairly established voice actress. So
don't know the name, but I can guarantee I know how many syllables it is.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, so this is nice because I think this is really good short form storytelling. We see a reminder of the fact that he doesn't like droids, right? Or at least that's what his take was in season 1. And they run out there, those pit droids, and apparently he's had a change of heart. We saw that after the whole experience with IG-11. I
really like that. I thought it was very sweet that all of a sudden he's just like, he just doesn't care anymore. Like, I was like, oh, that's very, like, it's like IG really, like, changed something in him where he's not as, like, pissed about droids anymore. Exactly. I thought it was very cute.
It's by far, I don't know, by far. Maybe I'll walk that back. I think it's a really nice way of showing character growth.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so anyway, he lands. They give him the crest a once over, whatever. I actually do like the little bit of humor they do with the pit droids here when they get the like vacuum thing stuck to his head.
Yeah.
Often they're used as for comedic purposes, but I thought it was like very quick, very subtle, and we moved on. And I just thought that was like really emblematic of the fact that I think this episode, and I'll dive into this deeper at the end, but I think this episode nails Star Wars tone basically perfectly. And that's just one really. They didn't linger on it. It didn't feel forced. It just felt natural to the whole thing, and it was quick and done, and we can move on. And I just thought that was nice. She's happy to see Baby Yoda. There's this weird line she says, "If this thing ever divides or buds, I'll gladly pay for the offspring," which I think is great. And I had the subtitles on for my rewatch because I was like, "What the heck is she saying there? What's the second word?"
I didn't realize that's what she said either.
Yeah,
but that's funny.
Divides or buds. What a fun way of thinking about having children. Yeah. She helps him find Mos Pelgo on an old Imperial era map, and this is projected by R5, which is the same droid from A New Hope with the bad motivator.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
Yeah,
you can see the little burn spot on the top of him.
Yeah. It really makes sense because obviously, like, we're dealing with the same people in the same small town. That droid's gonna live nearby.
Oh,
right?
For sure.
So that feels it again. And Dan, I think maybe you of all people might appreciate this most. None of the nods to any of the Star Wars stuff ever felt winky. It always just felt natural to the world.
That absolutely, you're right, because that's not shoehorned in at all. It makes sense for that droid to have existed there at that time, right? So it's an opportunity, and they jumped upon it. I feel like Star Wars has been guilty of doing that with less thought in the past, but this was a great example of it.
I just think it's nice to see R5 is still running well. Happy to see that. Although she does make fun of the fact that he's not very fast.
He's slow.
Yeah.
She helps him find, again, like I said, Mos Pelgo. apparently it's a bit of a free for all out there now that the Empire has fallen, or since the Empire has fallen, and she doesn't feel safe outside the city walls. She shows us Mos Espa, which is actually a place where Anakin was born, so that's a nice kind of like little nod there as well. And then shows us again Mos Pelgo, which is an old mining settlement. Then there's again, this is kind of one of those like expositionary moments where he says you can't fly there because they'll see you coming right away, which I don't see how is necessarily an issue because it's a town.
Yeah. people need to fly there,
right? Yeah. So he takes this speeder bike, which works for the story because it's a stand-in for a horse. In this episode, and it does a really good job of that.
You can't fly there; it won't look so cool.
Yeah.
And then I just love the montage of him traveling and talking to the Sand People, and the music here is really, really good. Any thoughts on this kind of just brief moment, kind of touching in on this character we've met from season 1?
Rachel?
I liked bringing her back. Like, I thought it was very cute. I liked her, I don't know, just her whole attitude towards Baby Yoda and how, like, cute she finds him. And,
right.
Yeah, I just really genuinely like her, and I don't want anything bad to happen to her. So.
And I think, Tatooine, notoriously safe place for people to live, so I'm sure everything will be fine.
I think she is probably safe given the fact that it's a Disney show. As much as you say it's going to be getting darker, it's not going to get that dark.
Well, yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, considering she survived like a hostage situation in the first season, I think you're probably right. She's probably safe.
I'm just always worried he's gonna like let her take care of Baby Yoda for a little bit, and then someone's gonna come for him, and like something bad's gonna,
Well, hey, Dan, you say that, but they killed the Ugnaught from season 1. Quill.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
right.
I know.
That was sad, unexpected. I'll give them that. That was unexpected.
Yeah.
Right.
I also just really like the scene of him riding like sidecar in the the bag. It was so cute.
It's clearly super dangerous for a small child to be hanging off the side of a speeder bike, but I mean it's sand, so it's fine.
I feel like he's way more reckless with him right now. Like in this.
Yeah, he just leaves him around. I mean, I guess maybe he's just more. He feels more like.
He already went through all last season with him.
Right.
Yeah.
The baby can survive. So.
Well, and he also knows that he can't tell him what to do because
that's true.
You put him into the pram and then he'll just get out and do whatever the fuck he wants. So he's like, whatever. I'll just let him live his life. Right.
Yeah.
So we get to Mos Pelgo, and he arrives in town riding the speeder, and this is where the Western feel starts to really hit hard.
It's an old frontier town.
Oh, it's so cool. So he's riding in really slow. This is kind of like that one-horse town kind of feel. And he's looking around. We got these reaction shots of people kind of like, who's this stranger? I got tingles from that moment. I was like, this is super cool stuff.
Yeah.
We get right after that a saloon door shot. There's no actual saloon doors, but like it's the same kind of camera angles and everything played exactly the same. Walking into a bar, Mando asks the bartender if there's any Mandalorians around. The bartender's confused, but he says the Marshal would be the only one similar to Mando around here. We get a slow reveal of a guy wearing Mandalorian armor. It's ill-fitting, it's beaten up, but it's clearly Boba Fett's armor. It's the
iconic.
Yeah, it's unmistakable.
Yeah, it's the original Mandalorian armor, right? It's what created this whole thing. This show doesn't exist without that armor, and it's literally because of the armor that it exists, because it looks cool. Yeah. Because Boba Fett did nothing cool during the entire time we've ever seen him on screen.
Yeah, but you knew he was capable of doing something cool. That's all that matters.
Right. Yeah. No disintegrations.
Yeah.
So the tension picks up here, and I think they do a really good job of doing a hard cut and music change and musical shift. It gets, again, very Western influenced. The quote-unquote stranger asks for 2 snorts of spotchka, which is such a fun thing to say with your mouth.
Yeah.
2 snorts of spotchka.
Those are words I don't normally make. Yeah.
That sounds like it should be like a Ukrainian food dish.
It does. It does sound like that.
Yeah.
Marcos is asking how many episodes are in this season. That's a great question. I was wondering that before we started, and I don't know. I think it's 8 again, but it might be 10.
It's got to be between 8 and 10.
Yeah. That's the one piece of knowledge I somehow don't have off the top of my head. So again, we get this guy revealing his armor. This stranger asks for 2 snorts of spotchka. He sits down and he takes his helmet off. This makes Mando stop in his tracks. He's like, "What?" By the way, I don't think this will be the first time that he's going to meet a Mandalorian this season that takes their helmet off.
Yeah.
Probably not.
And he's going to be stopped in his tracks multiple times. we already know that this kind of creed of not removing your helmet is new for the show. It's never been introduced in Star Wars canon before, and it clearly comes, if you're following the lore, it's something that happened after the Great Purge or whatever, the Night of 1,000 Tears or whatever it was called.
Oh, I see. Okay, I didn't realize that actually. I thought that was just his specific
their
tribe,
clan, their tribe.
Yeah,
yeah, and it very well might be, but this idea that there is Mandalorians throughout the universe or the galaxy, sorry, who are in hiding, right?
Yeah, it makes more sense that way than the way I was thinking. So yeah, it makes a lot more sense. They're hiding.
It's still really cool to have it because this is his whole life. He's been told that if you're a Mandalorian, you never take your helmet off, which isn't necessarily true, but
it's true to him.
It's true to him,
yeah.
Which is so he takes it off, and what they do is so cool here. They do this thing where they actually follow the helmet as it's removed and placed down on the table because it's the armor that you care about here and not the person wearing it yet. But that's what they're
you care about
on.
both. It's still a reveal that Timothy Oliphant is underneath the armor,
right?
But they just stagger it a little bit, right?
And you get this.
And I think it's more effective that way.
It's so cool, and the armor, the actual helmet itself, looks so good. It's obviously more beaten up. Yep. It's more distressed than it has been in the past, than we've seen it last time we saw it. And it's still got that iconic dent in the forehead.
Yeah. Nobody's buffed that out yet.
Yeah.
It's pretty deep. I was looking at it, it's that's a really deep dent for it. So I looked up why it's dented. Okay, before I started the show.
Tell us.
So there's two stories. There's two scenarios. One is a now quote-unquote Legends, the former expanded universe story, where he got into an altercation with Vader. Vader reflected a blaster bolt at his head, and he survived, obviously, due to the armor. But that's the extended universe story. Now no longer considered canon. Legends now. Now this is still even more gray area. The slightly more canon version comes from an animatic from an episode of the Clone Wars that never aired, that was never done, never completed.
Oh, okay.
But it's fully voiced, fully written,
okay.
and again the animatics are done, so it's pre-built. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these pre-done animatics, but it's basically just there's not a lot of extra motion, and the details are very limited. It kind of looks like Reboot.
Okay.
It's just so first pass at animation, and it's a standoff between him and Cad Bane, who is the bounty hunter, the badass bounty hunter introduced in Clone Wars.
Right.
And they have they have a standoff, classic Western standoff. The other kind of famous bounty hunters are there. Bosk is there. That guy with the cool hat is there. So there's they've got the cool the iconic guys are around. They have a standoff. He's wearing the armor, so he's teenager, because the last time we saw Boba Fett in Clone Wars, he's kind of still a kid. He's not wearing the armor yet. And so he's wearing the armor, and they have a standoff, and he gets shot in the head. They both fall down. They both get shot. And then it cuts to the helmet having fallen off of him and smoke coming off of that one spot and a blaster bolt spot on the helmet. And this smoke, apparently this, according to Dave Filoni, all them, this was a George Lucas idea to have this smoke coming off of the helmet and have it happen that way. So to me, that's probably the more canon, quote unquote, answer to that question, where that dent comes from. But leave it up to you guys. It's still not entirely been written in stone. Yeah. What do you guys think of that?
I've never pictured a laser bolt causing a dent.
No, me neither. But yeah,
I suppose it's technically possible.
I guess because it's Beskar and it's supposed to be because his I would
typically it just goes right
Beskar.
through, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess somewhere down the line there is an impact. So I guess if the armor is strong enough,
it's absorbs it, and
I don't know how it all works, and I don't need to, but I've never thought about that being a blaster bolt.
Right. Right. So anyway, that's the story there.
I would assume that they can't just especially just these random people that have his armor can't really. How are they supposed to fix it? How are you supposed to fix Beskar?
Well, because no one knows how. Right?
That's what I mean. That's probably why it still has all these dents and.
And that's why later he's "Tell your people I didn't break that," which I thought was such a fun line.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
So anyway, we get back to the table scene here, and he says he sits down. This quote unquote stranger, she sits down. He says he's never met a real Mandalorian before, but he knows they're good at killing, which is something we've heard now several times. And probably not happy to see him in his ancestral armor. he says he assumed that he was going to have to fight him. Basically, he's like, only one of us are going to get out of here. But Baby Yoda, the presence of Baby Yoda, gave him pause to like reevaluate.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah, he says like, I thought that that's what was going to happen, but the kid maybe reconsider.
Okay.
Which I think is a really cool idea.
Yeah.
That he was ready to throw down, but he's like, you know what, this guy has a kid. There's something else going on here. Let's figure it out. This is why he gets the spotchka. You know?
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, spotchka's bright blue. I've got to figure out a way to make a bright blue drink that that I can call spotchka and I can put in snorts.
It's just gonna have to be like a lot. Remember that Hypnotic liqueur?
I don't think is Hypnotic is around anymore.
It's not. It's discontinued.
So we got to find it. Now it makes it even more special.
Yeah. You can get Vinic now, but it's like purple and sparkly.
I don't want purple sparkly. I want blue. I want blue. So do they sell blue Alizé?
I think they do still. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
That's close.
Okay, we'll start with that.
Yeah.
Work our way.
I feel like for the show they probably use Kool-Aid.
Maybe I don't know. It's like glowing.
Yeah.
So maybe they have a light in there. I don't know.
Just Pepsi
for the
Blue.
record, we are all former bartenders, so there are
former emphasis on the former
bartender. Well, because there's no such thing as bartending in the COVID world.
Yeah.
So he explains that his name is Cobb Vanth, the Marshal of Mos Pelgo, and that he bought the armor off of some Jawas. Cobb Vanth, for those who are not aware, is actually a character who's introduced in the novels, where his story is basically interspersed as interludes throughout this 3-part series of novels called the Aftermath Trilogy, which takes place right after the Battle of Jakku, I believe, or right around that time. It's right before the Battle of Jakku. It ends at the Battle of Jakku, if I'm not mistaken. They're dealing with Imperial remnants, and that kind of stuff. So his story is interspersed. They never explicitly say that the armor's from Boba Fett because none of those people would ever know. But it's very heavily hinted at and implied. I mean, that's what they're showing here, and they do show that story in flashback. Basically, all those interludes or pieces of it in flashback. There's a kind of a piece missing about the monster wrangler from Jabba's palace. The guy who fed and took care of the Rancor and stuff.
The topless guy that cries when the Rancor dies.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. He's associated into this somehow. I don't remember how. They don't touch on him, obviously, but he's involved in Cobb Vanth's story in the actual book. And he's played by Timothy Oliphant, named after the fake elephant creature from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Named after the Mumakil from Lord of the Rings.
Right. Yes. I thought they're called Oliphants. That's what Sam calls them.
Yeah, Mumakil is their Sindarin name.
Oh, okay.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, look forward to our recaps of Lord of the Rings.
Can't wait. Oh my god, I can't wait. It's going to be tables turned, man.
Oh, you guys are in for a real treat. Okay, so let's check in on Marcos here. Hypnotic might be the worst thing to ever exist, besides Hennessy, he says.
No. Here's your mistake, Marcos. If you mix Hennessy and Hypnotic together, you get an Incredible Hulk shot.
Yeah.
I highly recommend. No, you should. I guess you can't get Hypnotic anymore, but it's a good shot, actually.
I guarantee you there's bottles of Hypnotic in the world that can be found and obtained.
Yeah, they're probably at Tavern United.
They're still in boxes.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Yeah, that and their apricot brandy. That's
Yeah.
collecting dust for the last 1,000 years. Anyway, so for those who don't know who Cobb Vanth is, it's cool. This is one of those moments where if you've been reading the books, this is a really exciting moment for you.
Payoff for sure.
And it's the fact that they even went and did the flashbacks, I think, is pretty cool. What do you guys think of Cobb Vanth and Timothy Oliphant? I think he did a great job.
I really like him, but it's hard for me to not see him as
the dude from Deadwood.
No, the guy he plays a character in The Office very briefly.
Mm.
And his
Wait, so he has one appearance in The Office. How long is he in The Office?
A couple episodes.
Okay. A couple episodes. But his name's Danny Cordray, and he's this really handsome salesman that's really intimidating to everybody.
That's very funny. He just seems like. And it just seems like one of those movie star actor great looks. The fact that he pulls his helmet off and he has perfect hair underneath, drives me insane.
He's a pretty man.
I hate it, but I love it at the same time. And his southern drawl is just so comforting.
That one bugged me a little bit. I thought that was maybe a little bit too much.
You thought he was putting on too much. Putting in a little bit too much work.
I thought the westerny feel was getting pushed a little too hard with that accent. But
have
I still
you guys
enjoyed
watched Deadwood?
So. Because of this episode, I now want to.
You should, yeah, because they are doing it deliberately. Yeah, they have to because his character is very similar to the character in Deadwood. He comes in and he's like a new sort of sheriff. He's the new sheriff in town.
Oh, really?
He's
literally like the same guy.
He's kind of like, you know, he knows how to navigate this wild west world, but he's trying to do the right thing and trying to protect people and you know, really make the town a cohesive whole. So it's a very similar character.
I gotta watch Deadwood, and it's like
that was a great show.
I gotta watch Deadwood, and the thing that it's like clearly what happened was they were writing Cobb Vanth for this show, and they're like, who should play the Western sheriff of this town? Oh, I know, the Western sheriff from that famous Western show.
Yeah, whoever the first hit on Google is.
Yeah, right. But honestly, I'm fine with him. I like him.
Doesn't he also play like a character in like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? He's like an actor on that Western that Leonardo DiCaprio's in too.
I haven't seen the movie yet.
That maybe he does play cowboy in a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
he does play cowboy in a lot of stuff.
He's got a very good cowboy. Yeah,
he's been typecast as a cowboy, and it sucks because we're not in the like golden age of Western cinema where he'd be a millionaire.
Deadwood.
I think he still is.
You don't know that.
Deadwood's not that vampire show, is it?
No, it's a like cowboy show from on HBO and there was like it was off the air for a long time, and then they did a final conclusion movie like a couple years back.
Oh, okay.
Last year.
It's last year.
I haven't seen all of Deadwood or the movie yet, but from what I have seen, they're very similar characters.
Okay, so Mando demands that he give him the armor, threatens him. Basically said, you know, it's a weird line where he says like, if you don't remove it, I will. Which sounds like he's gonna remove his own armor, which is kind of funny.
The second time I watched it, I giggled because it was like kind of like sexual tension.
It does have that feel to it. I thought it was very cute.
Yeah.
Like the cutest threat you could make.
He said like, if you don't take it off, I will. And I was like, ooh.
Yeah, ooh. This show's very different than I remember it.
Yeah.
So, and then he makes a comment about you want to do this in front of the kid. This, by the way, the second reference to people concerned about the child being exposed to violence in this episode already, which I find very fascinating. I think that's a really kind of like, it's even because you have this guy who turns out we find out later is a good guy, but we don't know this right now.
Sure.
Concerned about the well-being of this kid, and then you have this the one-eyed alien from the previous planet, also for some reason concerned about the well-being or of having seeing violence. What's the message here? Is that like universally, whether you're a good or bad person, you care what happens to kids, or what's the?
I mean, you would hope so. I don't think so. I think you can read them both different ways.
Yeah.
John Leguizamo's character cares about the kid because he knows he's valuable,
right?
Whereas Timothy Olyphant's character cares about the kid because it's a kid and you don't want anything bad to happen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it is kind of a bit of like a universal, like, okay, isn't that like a baby? You know, like people being like, should he be here?
Which also has never really been a thing in Star Wars. Like Anakin was a kid and Sebulba was a piece of shit to him.
Right, that's true. That is true. That is true. And to be fair, everyone was kind of a piece of shit to him. But
right, and I mean, I don't think that younglings are very featured in Star Wars very often. I guess
almost never.
So,
but they're always
we don't
super
see it too
cute.
Much.
Baby Ahsoka is very cute in the flashback in the Clone Wars when she meets Plo Koon for the first time. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Younglings, and that's another thing. Like, I guess they do the Jedi. Is it just the Jedi that call them younglings, or are younglings just the? I don't know. Well, it's hard to know right now. Anyway, the line that Mando replies with it's in front of the kid. He's seen worse, which is actually true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like he's so nonchalant about it too. He's like, he's seen worse. Like, right. It's just.
Well, everything that the Mandalorian does is very nonchalant. He just treats everything like he's been there before, which I might get old. But we'll see. So they stand like they're gonna have a duel. This is again classic cowboy stuff. They have like the classic cowboy standoff and the medium shot, which is still to this day called the cowboy shot, which is a medium that just exposes enough of your legs to show your gun holster. Still called a cowboy in Hollywood today. So they do that. They do this like quick, like who's gonna draw first, and then they get interrupted by a earthquake, or we assume is some sort of earthquake. Turns out it's not an earthquake. It is a crate dragon or a creature of some kind. There's like a weird sound that they play, which is this like this cry of the crate dragon. What I think is really cool, and again, another very subtle callback, is that that's the same sound that Obi-Wan uses to scare off the Sand People in in episode 4.
Oh, cool.
And they just use a version of that sound to
that's really
smart. Right?
That's really impressive.
Isn't that
that's
cool?
really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I also really thought that was cool.
Yeah.
And then I said a very Tremors-esque giant worm. It's a bantha.
I got a lot of Tremors vibes from it.
Well, I think you can't not get Tremors vibes.
Yeah.
Or what's that other movie with? Is it
Dune?
Dune. Well, obviously Dune. I'm not thinking Dune, but I'm thinking of the it's called The Dig or with Shia LaBeouf. You know what I'm talking about? Holes. You dig holes?
Dig. It's called dig.
Whatever, guys.
It's just called sand.
We have another person in the chat. Kabakashi says hello. Kabakashi. Hello, how are you doing? So Cobb says that he's aware that the creature has been terrorizing town for as long as the town has been around, basically. Says that even though the armor is able to protect him and the town from bandits and sand people, a crate dragon is too much to take on alone. Says he'll give him the armor if he helps him kill it. This is that bet I meant before. He's betting on himself, right? The caveat again is that he can't use the ship. They've done the
the creatures evolved such that it
Yes.
can only be attacked from the ground.
Right. So you can't use the ship. You can't use the ship to get to the town. You can't use the ship to kill the dragon. Whatever. Sense the vibration, standard ground. Note that Mando is betting on himself here. That's what I mentioned before. What I do think is really weird is this cut to this wind vane that starts to spin up really fast as the crate dragon approaches. Makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. But it's a classic Western shot.
Yeah. Dragon's going really fast through the sand, so
it's generating its own wind.
I can't. There's no way.
I don't know. It's just what's going on?
No, I was just gonna say at first I thought that I did because obviously I didn't know it was gonna be a crate dragon or what that was. I thought it was one of those I think they're called Jubas. And they're those big worms from Rebels that the clones were hunting.
Right, yeah.
I thought it was one of those at first.
And they're basically the same thing.
Yeah.
But they're not on that planet that they were on in Rebels, so it has to be a crate dragon. And by the way, the crate dragon skeleton, the very first iteration, is seen in A New Hope when R2 and C-3PO are just walking through and they see the skeleton. It's a baby one or a juvenile crate dragon, which is actually a skeleton from a older Disney movie called Someone Stole My Dinosaur or something like that. They took this fake dinosaur skeleton, they took it into the desert and they placed it there, and that's a little bit of backstory for you.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay, so we now have the speeder bike sequence 2 and a flashback. So I just generally love these speeder bike sequences. I think again that's very Western inspired. I love the music here. They do a little bit of classical guitar or Spanish guitar, a little bit. I'm a particular fan of Spanish guitar. I love it. Then they use it in here. I think it's really well done. And another thing, by the way, that season 2, all of its score was done virtually. So they did a virtual score again where they recorded individual instruments separately and then mixed them in post, which is very crazy. And I think it still turned out pretty good because the music is still very good. So Cobb's bike looked like it's made out of a old pod racing engine. I think this is intentional.
I thought that. I was like, is that not part of Anakin's old pod racer?
It looks very
the front
much.
of it kind of looks like it, but
my headcanon says that that's an engine from Anakin's old pod racer.
Yeah.
It has the same little flaps at the front that go up and down, and then it's like a little bit different color. But again, it's been a long time, so it might have been repainted and repurposed.
Yeah.
But again, not calling attention to it. Just another example of them using that old Tatooine tech that's around and repurposing and reusing it. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was pretty cool. Instead of obviously they're not going to drive pod racers, but
right. They should have said. Someone should have said, "No, this is pod racing." So they have a conversation, which turns into a flashback. This would make sense if they were both on horses or if they're both wearing their helmets. But instead, they just have a casual conversation with these super loud speeder bikes sitting next to each other. It makes no sense. It's a very small nitpick.
Maybe their helmets can talk to each other.
But he wasn't wearing his helmet.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
That's yeah. And maybe it's just Timothy Olyphant wanting more FaceTime.
Maybe
doesn't want to wear the helmet all the time. Maybe he thought it was uncomfortable. That might be true. I don't know.
Yeah, he's too handsome.
He is very handsome. So this is a flashback, and they're talking about this time, which is right at the same moment they're like learning of the destruction of the second Death Star. He's like, and the second one. He like makes it very clear.
Distinction.
Yeah. And so there's this like hollow projection. There's like Arabesh coming around the bottom. That Arabesh is actually the opening crawl from Return of the Jedi. They just turn into Arabesh, which doesn't really mean anything. I guess it's just a cool callback. It's kind of dumb actually when you think about it, but because it doesn't really make sense in context. But that's what it is. Someone did the work. I didn't do that work. And it was backwards, so they had to do. I think it was Screen Crush. I'll give Screen Crush credit on that. They had to flip it and then translate it to make it.
And it was just the opening crawl.
It was the opening crawl from Jedi. Yeah. Could have been anything, but that's what they chose to use.
I guess it just looks Star Warsy enough, right?
Well, they could have. Like, you could literally type anything in Arabesh and it looks Star Warsy, right? For those who aren't aware, Arabesh is the alphabet in Star Wars. They still speak Basic, which is English, but they write things in Arabesh, which is that language you see around. So I mentioned that the whole stuff about the Aftermath books. This is just that stuff I mentioned before. Everything he does there, he kind of this mining collective moves in the very first night the Empire leaves. I guess there's this sign that he says the power hates a vacuum, and
as it blew up, they walked in the door.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could argue that they've found out the news and said, "Oh wow, the Emperor is going to be out of here. We have an opportunity to," right?
I got the impression it was live news, but
Sure. I mean, also it's like he's telling you the story, right? So it's like it's an unreliable narrator to some degree.
I guess, yeah.
Anyway, so they turn the town into a slave camp. Like I said, power hates a vacuum. Cobb grabbed the Cantono, which is that ice cream maker, famous for making an appearance in.
What?
Yeah. So it's the same thing that he had the Beskar in season 1. Mando had.
Oh yeah.
It's like So
I remember the story now.
Right. You remember this? You remember the story?
Yeah.
I'm not going to recap it here. They actually cover it in the gallery stuff where they talk about this whole thing with this guy carrying an ice cream maker that they did nothing to. It's just an ice cream maker, and it just got people latched onto it. So they've now repurposed that. It now contains valuables. In this case, the valuables are some crystal. He grabs that. It's called a Cantono, and he mentioned again. I just love some of this like westerny space babble bullshit because he's like, I guess sometimes the sun does shine on a womp rat's tail.
So
meaning what?
it sometimes good things happen to bad people.
Sure.
I guess is the idea there. So he wanders through the desert. You get this like the way everything is so westerny. The way he like walks through the desert with his like legs like wobbling, and he gets found by the Jawas. He trades the crystals for armor, for the armor and water, and he returns to the town. He shoots all of the mining people, the mining collective people, and even uses all the gadgets we never got to see Boba Fett use.
That's true.
Yeah.
I will say, like you mentioned earlier, that the armor is ill-fitting. Like he doesn't look exactly imposing.
No, he doesn't.
And it doesn't seem like he would be invincible in that armor. He got lucky.
He got shot. Right in the armor.
The one spot where there was armor.
Yeah. And then I love how he again, it's all stylized, but he gets shot and he takes a second to think about that he got shot and then shoots the rest of the people, and then uses a little targeting thing. Antenna.
Yeah, and the graphics are right out of the 80s.
I love that. It's all the same sound effects too. They actually use the exact same sound effects from the 80s. He shoots the missile. It blows up that speeder. How he gets a new missile, unclear.
I was gonna say that. I was like, where do you get new ones of those?
It's a whole backpack. What else do you think is in there?
Well, I think it's only a jetpack and a missile launcher.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean,
he's got spare missiles in there somewhere.
So when he bought the armor, he got the spare missiles.
Sure.
But
no. Maybe the backpack makes missiles. I don't know. I haven't decided.
Okay. Again, it doesn't matter, but that's just one kind of small nitpick. So Cobb, blah, 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 blah. He gets the stuff. He kills all the people. Yada yada. Thoughts on any of this kind of backstory or flashbacks?
I always like seeing Jawas. They crack me up. I just like that they just find people when they're always desperate. Yeah. They're just so funny that the things that they want and they just point at stuff. They're like, yeah, that looks cool. We'll
and
it's just
And he's basically saying like, hey, I had this crystal and they wanted it, so they offered their finest wares. He like brings out this fancy astromech droid.
Yeah.
It's so good. He's like dying of thirst.
Yeah, he's just like, no.
I also do enjoy Jawas. I'll agree with that. And these sand crawlers have made an appearance now multiple times in the series.
They're iconic at this point, definitely.
They're so cool, yeah.
What I always find weird is that Jawas are all over like the galaxy, and they all have the exact same like crawlers, and like the Jawas on the last like whatever the planet, that like lava planet they were on in season 1 were black instead of gray. That was brown, but that's the only distinction I could tell between them. They're just scavengers, all of them.
Yeah, they don't have any cities. Like, what do they do with this stuff? They just like to trade. Like, they just exist for the to be able to.
So that one time they can get an egg. Eventually they can get an egg one day. Because again, because on that other planet that he gets the egg on, that's also not Tatooine. So it's like another, like, everything's this kind of similar there. But, again, that's just kind of a Star Wars nitpick generally. Okay, so we move on. We get to the Sand People camp, and the two of them get, quote-unquote, ambushed in a canyon by these dog reptile things. We've actually seen these before. They're in Attack of the Clones when Anakin finds his mother at a camp. And we all know what happens.
Clone Wars too.
Yes, they are.
Because they use them to try and track Ahsoka down after she leaves the temple.
Yeah, that's a great callback. They're called mastiffs, not mastiffs. Mastiffs or Tusken dogs, according to Wikipedia. Mastiffs are classified as reptiles, and the spines which protrude from their backs help determine their age. They're also typically found in desert climates such as Geonosis or Tatooine, or Coruscant, apparently. And those clones have like really cool, specific like dog trainer armor. It's like very cool.
Yeah, I think they're called like ARF, like they're called ARF clones.
ARF clones. Yeah. Might as well call them wolf clones.
I
know. So Mando is apparently friends with these dogs and calms them down by speaking Tusken. Tusken Raiders / Sand People arrive. I'm just going to call them Tuskens unless I forget. Arrive, and Mando says that they also want to kill the Krayt Dragon. Right? So they've kind of like brokered a small piece. Cut to nighttime around a fire, and you have to wonder where they get wood for these fires. And it happens all the time on Tatooine. There's always fires, but there's no fucking trees. Where does the wood come from?
There are trees somewhere. Maybe they come from our planet. I don't know.
Yeah, or they're burning other things like bones or something else that burns.
Whatever the bantha tusks are made out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I always find that very funny. And so they're sitting around this fire. They're talking in sign language. Another kind of fun fact here for you guys is I'm just full of facts today. Apparently, Lucasfilm hired some deaf actors for these roles, and they helped them come up with this Tusken sign language, which is obviously not standard sign language.
I really like that. I really like the inclusion of like a sign language into Star Wars. I thought that was really just really awesome. It's nice to see. I'm sure people who do use sign language in their everyday life really appreciate being represented in Star Wars. I thought that was really cool.
Absolutely. I think the line I saw on the tweet was that you just sometimes got to look around the room and see who's not there. Which is I think a fun and really wholesome kind of perspective. Absolutely.
Yeah, I loved it.
And I also like that they use it a couple times, but this idea of this chop motion is kill in Tusken. And they kind of give us that translation, but it's used multiple times throughout the episode without them kind of telling us, which I also like good world building.
I think it also adds a little bit more to the Tusken Raiders too. It's you're seeing them as more of a civilized people.
This
and
is
they
the
have
most
their own
fleshed
language
out we've ever seen them.
Yeah, it's just nice that you're not seeing them just screaming and killing people. It's nice to be oh no, they have a language and they have a culture and they have all these other things.
This is the same kind of perspective that later on you get from later Western films where the quote unquote Aboriginal people were kind of just treated as just disposable or the enemy all the time. But then you get more perspective over time, and then people start treating them a bit differently, and we kind of get this new perspective on Tusken Raiders. Yes, they are still Raiders, and they say that, but that's just the way of life. And then even in the season 1, they said, well, they consider you to be the outsiders.
Yes,
which
exactly.
is such a it's so cool. I just the way that they treat Tuskens in Mandalorian since season 1 has been, I think, commendable.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Anyway, so they're sitting around this fire. Cobb is offered this drink that looks like the black goo from Prometheus. And he's like, it stinks. I don't want to try. I don't want to drink this. And honestly, I feel you, because that does not look appetizing.
Of course not.
But he's apparently insulting them. He's insults them. He's like, what, you kill their people, you steal their water, which also, don't they use moisture evaporators? Are they saying that you steal the moisture out of the air, and that's them stealing their water? Is that the idea?
I guess, yeah. Stealing whatever water that they've been able to farm from the environment,
right,
from their moisture farms.
And anyway, they get into this big argument, and Mando helps to fuse the whole thing. But again, this whole idea of yes, which I don't know. I guess everyone just respects the flamethrower.
Yeah.
That's how they started the fire, by the way. I don't know what they're using for fuel, but that's how they started the fire.
Yeah. This is again another Western trope. This kind of like this set in his ways, kind of sheriff or character, kind of learning to work with the indigenous population. A little maybe on the nose, but I think they're clearly going for that Western feel here.
Star Wars has always been on the nose, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
It's a direct analog of the Western dynamics.
Yep. And one thing that's with this episode that you don't see that is pulled into Star Wars generally is it's Western with like a Western samurai thing. That's what's typically going on. The Jedi typically represent the samurai.
Sure.
There's no Jedi here, so it's just the Western part. Okay. So Mando defuses the situation, says they have to work together or the monster will kill them all. So they go to the Krayt Dragon's lair. There's a brief scene of everyone traveling on banthas in single file to hide their numbers. Of course, we see a bantha being led to the mouth of the cave. Apparently, the dragon lives in an abandoned Sarlacc pit. Cobb is skeptical, even though he said he knew where it lives, which is weird. He's like, I know where it lives, and then he's like, I don't think well, maybe he doesn't believe that it's abandoned Sarlacc.
He probably
pit.
just that's kind of what I got from it.
I do love the lines. I've been living on Tatooine my whole life. And ain't no such thing as an abandoned Sarlacc pit. And then Mando's like, unless it's eaten.
Yeah.
There's this thing where like the Mandalorian seems to have more knowledge and understanding of Tatooine and its culture than the people who live there, which I don't necessarily love. That like he comes and he just knows how to do everything already. He doesn't learn anything new or gain any new skills here. He's just, except first time he's kind of like, no, maybe this is not the first time he's worked with other quote unquote Mandalorians. So I don't even know. Like that does bug me. If I had to have a gripe,
no, the idea is that he has prior experience with Tatooine. That's
right.
not the first time he's been to the planet. We don't get to see how long he's been there or
right.
what he's learned from the planet. But I guess it's easy to extrapolate from
We've seen it from season 1.
Just the fact that he's been there before and he was as comfortable there before,
right.
as confident before.
Yeah.
You can extrapolate.
Because how else would he know like the Tusken sign language and all that too? Like.
Right. I'm not saying he doesn't know. What I'm saying is it's weird that he's got all this like additional knowledge that even the guy who's lived in he's been living in a small town his whole life. His perspective is small, but you've got these people who've been there their entire lives, and I guess they're just a little bit closed-minded. I guess maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
We find out that in fact they are, but that's not the point. Okay. So apparently the Tuskens have studied the digestive cycle for generations and used the bantha to keep the dragon sleeping longer. It's another like one line of dialogue throwaway, but really great world building, I think.
Yeah.
So we see the Tusken again. We see the Tusken call into the cave, and we hear the big growl, and he runs away. But I love this scene because it's like, oh well, he's always going to eat the bantha because you've already seen him eat the bantha once. But then he just eats the Tusken, and the Tuskens are like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And Mando is like, I think they're open to some new, fresh ideas.
Yeah,
it happens twice in this episode where it's like, don't be surprised that there's a dragon coming.
Right.
Like, when they do the reaction shot for the Tusken Raiders, they're like, oh god, there's a dragon coming. Right. Now start running. You know the plan.
Right, like call and then run. Like don't wait for it.
Yeah, like they stagger their runs too much.
Right.
They're surprised they see a dragon
I
coming.
will say this though, if we're talking about them running, in the second time we see when there's 3 of them running, they are running at their full fucking speed. It like you cut to these people and they are just sprinting, and it feels very earnest and real, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
those 3 don't get eaten.
Just you would think if they were doing this for generations, they would have the timing down. You know.
Well, I mean, yeah. They also don't use blasters. They still use slug throwers. So they're a little bit old fashioned.
Sure.
So I would just one last thing for you is that Mando's using the quad knocks that he took off the bounty hunter guy from the last season, the one that he killed in the standoff. He took his quad knocks. So that's a small note. Okay, so they're back at the camp. The Tuscans have set up a crude diagram using bones and rocks to drop a plan. I love that Cobb doesn't think it's to scale, or that he cares about that it's to scale.
That's more important. Well, that's not to scale. What kind of amateur operation is this?
And it makes me think of Doctor or Professor, whatever his name is from Back to the Future. He's like, excuse my crude diagram. Right. And it's always so perfect. But even this is pretty perfect because it's to scale. I like that. I don't know if that's intentional, but it does feel good. Anyway, they make the dragon look huge because if it's as big as they say in this diagram, it's fucking huge. Right? And we'd find out later that it is, in fact, fucking huge. Tuscans drop more rocks / people after Mando says something to them in Tuscan. Mando says that he's volunteered the village to help. So we got back to town, and Cobb says that the Tuscans have attacked the town less than a year ago and killed about 6 people. Cobb brags that he killed probably twice as many sand people, he says, but Tuscans. Yeah. Any thoughts on any of this stuff? This kind of this scoping out this cave, this figuring out a plan, and then kind of starting down that track. Rachel?
Oh, me.
Yes.
No, I liked it. I really enjoyed the banter between what's his name, Cobb and Mandalorian about it could be a Starlight pit, and he's just wrong all the time. That can't be to scale, and they're like, no, it is.
Well, he's just super skeptical, right? Yeah. He's kind of playing that he's been used to being the guy who knows everything, but now this is kind of a new situation for him.
Yeah, the big fish in a small pond.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. But no, I enjoyed all those scenes, and I liked, like I said, I liked seeing all the newer stuff with the Tuscans. Yeah.
So Mando says that the town will listen to Cobb, and they'll listen to reason if he presents it to them. So there's a meeting in the bar. The whole townsfolk come having a meeting in the bar. Again, very classic Western. He introduces Mando, and again, the whole good at killing thing, right? Explains the armor situation, and then explains the whole crate dragon situation. What I like here is that he introduces Mando as kind of being this person coming to change their way of life. He's coming to mess things up, and then to rally the town around him and his kind of perspective. And then he kind of flips it on them and says, well, actually, there's a whole other perspective. Right. And now that he's already have them kind of galvanized, right?
Yeah, they're already there's already an other for them to,
which is important for them because they need to hate something. He says that there's this one line. He's like there's he's this trait dragon's come. He's eaten our banthas. He's messed with the town. God forbid he comes for the school, which is basically won't someone think of the children moment. Yeah. Right. And then,
which is very keeping with his character, having cared about Baby Yoda earlier in the episode.
Yeah.
How I guess children are important to this guy.
Right. He, again, like I said, rallies the town around this whole situation. I like that he calls the crate dragon a Leviathan. I think it's Mando that calls him Leviathan. I don't remember who says it. Might be Cobb. But what a amazing word. I just feel like Leviathan is not used enough generally.
Definitely not. Yeah.
I do not know what that word means. So
Dan, as the resident dictionary here, would you like to?
Leviathan, if I remember correctly, is a biblical term for essentially for a whale.
Okay.
It's any sort of large creature from the deep. And Julian looked up the actual definition.
A sea monster identified in different passages with the whale and the crocodile.
In biblical use.
Right.
Oh, okay. Use. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
And with the devil, Isaiah 27:1. So there you go. A very large aquatic creature with especially a whale, a thing that is very large or powerful, especially a ship. So
interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So that's the backstory there. I just around the term Leviathan. I just like that they used it. That's the deal there. So the deal is that the town needs to leave the carcass, and it's another word that we get to use here, Ichor, I believe it's to the Tuscans, and that they'll leave the town alone until someone from the town breaks the peace, because they just know that someone from the town is going to break the peace.
Just throwing that in there.
Right. That's them confirming that the peace will be kept.
Right. It's not us. If you do something, then deal's off.
Can't be held responsible for my actions.
Yeah.
So Ichor, or I don't know how to pronounce it properly.
You need definition of that one too?
Yeah, Well, I did look it up previously. Is defined as the fluid that flows like blood in the veins of the gods, or a watery discharge from a wound.
Ew.
Gross. Which version do you think they're using here?
Well, both.
I guess.
Right?
Yeah, both.
How do you pronounce it?
Also want its blood?
Ichor.
It's from the Greek gods, essentially. Like
right.
If you cut them, they'd be like a white sort of, essentially their version of blood, but it's white and glowing.
Right. So they're saying like that's valuable to the Tuscans.
Yes.
Right. They agree they agree to this deal, and they start loading up mining explosives as the Tuscans arrive on Tabanthas. And I really like this kind of this shot here. Again, this is really quick, but I think it's important to note that they do another musical change here, and there's a little bit of more ominous, a little bit more scary, but not like threatening. You know what I mean? Just a little bit different. That kind of that feeling of the other.
Right.
And as the Tuscans arrive on their banthas again.
That's the coolest shot in this whole episode, is the Tuscans arriving on their banthas, the way the music kicks in.
It's so cool.
Yeah,
it's like that music cue is on point. It's very good. And there's like all these shots of people's reactions, and they kind of like stare. They kind of like staring them down.
Yeah.
They don't trust them, obviously, and nor would you, because again they have been raiding their town for the record
for years, for these people's entire lives.
Yeah. So one of the Tuscans drops an explosive. There's this small argument. Notice that Cobb is the one that defends the Tuscan here. He says it's an accident, which I think shows some just very brief growth by Cobb in just a very short amount of time. Rachel, what do you think of that?
No, I really like that too. I liked that it wasn't Mando again being like the neutral party that had to split things up. It was like you see that like switch in Cobb to like protecting the Tuscans and trying to like show the townspeople like, hey, like I trust these people, I'm on their side too, like you guys need to be as well. So he's just trying to ease those tensions a little bit by like, leading by example, right?
Yeah. And then of course he does undercut it a little bit by saying it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
which is a fun, like just like great line reading. Tim the Oliphant has like basically every line reading is very is spot on. But again, he's kind of a practiced Western
He's a
guy.
Charismatic guy. What can you say?
He's so handsome. Anyway, so they agree, and then they load all their stuff up, and they head off to the cave. There is another brief shot that I really like. Quick calling shot too. This is Mando and Cobb riding their speeders along the side of this like bantha train. Yep. And Mando's sitting there, and he's riding the speeder bike with one hand. It looks so badass. I'm just like,
I didn't even notice that.
It looks super cool, and he's basically just like, again, it's that if replace those with horses, and it's just like him protecting the caravan, right?
Yeah.
I actually would really like someone to just like CG or like paste on horses on top of those scenes just to see what it look. It would look stupid, but it would be kind of fun, I think. Okay, so we get back to the crate dragon lair. Unless you guys have any other thoughts, Dan, do you have any other thoughts on?
No, I missed that last little bit.
Okay. We are back at the crate dragon. This is the second time we're there, and everyone arrives, and we watch as the Tuscans approach the mouth of the cave down. There's 3 of them. It's very quiet. There's only 1 this time, but there's 3 later. There's 1 now. The Tuscan signs back, says that it's sleeping. Apparently, if you listen very closely, you can hear it breathing.
Wow.
That's what Mando says. I don't know. I turned the volume up. I couldn't really hear it breathing. So,
I think I could. It was like a soft kind of rumbling. Like it just sounded like like the steady rumbling of like something sleeping.
Right. That like throaty kind of.
Yeah. Exactly.
Kind of
yeah.
I don't know. My subwoofer's broken, so I didn't get that like deep rumble that I normally would appreciate. So Gosh,
I
shut
don't
up,
have
guys.
subwoofers either. Okay, I just listen to it. On
Yeah,
my
but that means that
I watched it on my motherfucking laptop.
Yeah. Okay, Jules.
Don't you have a TV?
Subwoofers.
Yeah, but I watched it on my laptop.
Oh, okay. I have a subwoofer, guys. I take my home theater experience very seriously. Anyway, so there's another quick shot here. Another kind of like growth of a character moment for Cobb. He's past that black goo. This time he drinks it. But he doesn't look happy about it. He's not happy about it. Again, reminds me of the Prometheus stuff. Okay, so they get to work. Classic Western montage. The plan is to attack from below by burying the charges. The belly is its only weak spot, which, on those types of monsters, it's almost always the belly.
See, this is where it kind of crosses over from Western and Samurai into Knights in Shining Armor, right? Because that's
right.
Traditionally, the weak point on a dragon is his belly, where it's not scaled, and this is very much a group of knights going to slay a dragon.
Well, and it's literally a dragon. They're not even calling it by a different name.
Again, Star Wars, very much on the nose.
Right. So, hey, Dan, can you give me your history with a crate dragon? I know you mentioned when I told you that this episode had featured heavily a crate dragon, you got really excited. Why is that?
Well, it's essentially a dinosaur. That's
right. Sorry, I don't even know I didn't. Yeah,
it's a giant reptile. No, I mean they're very different in Knights of the Old Republic. By the way, they're more of like.
So is that where you first encountered them?
Yeah, it must have been. It would have to have been.
Okay.
So Knights of the Old Republic is a very similar mission that you have to go on as a character in that game, where you have to go to a cave. The cave looks very much the same. To
probably intentional.
Slay a dragon. However, the dragon is very much different. It looks more like a traditional drake, I guess. If you know anything about dragons, it has 4 legs, no wings.
Right. Okay.
So it looks more like a classic reptilian dragon as opposed to a worm.
Right.
But I looked it up after the episode, and supposedly there's 2 different types of crate dragons. The one that I'm more familiar with would be called a canyon crate dragon. This is a greater crate dragon.
Cool. Right. I didn't know that. So someone did some their own research.
Is there also a crate dragon in Fallen Order?
I played that game and I don't recall there being a crate dragon. Maybe one reference.
It's on one of those it's in one of those the first planets you go to. It's way off to the one side. You can kind of go up near and look at it.
I know what you're talking about. The planet in that game, where the Jedi Temple is, where you have you're sent to, and there is a giant dragon. I don't know if it's a crate dragon.
Right? No. That's not. That's not a crate dragon. It's a giant lizard, and it's off in the distance.
It is a dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a dragon, but I think it probably has a different name.
And it's just chilling there in the sun.
Yeah. You want to get to it, and you can't.
You can't get to it.
Why design a game that way? Where I can't get to this super interesting thing.
I was thinking, you're gonna put a giant creature, and then you get over there nearby, and the sound design on the breathing is really creepy.
Yeah, you can hear it, you can see it, and you can get close enough to almost jump to it.
And you have a ship. You have a ship, but you can't get there. Right. No. Grumble, grumble, grumble. So again, they plant all these explosives. It's a mining town, so I like that. Again, this all comes together using mining charges to slay this dragon. And by the way, there's something I noticed here. So this is a mining town, right? Where you can apparently mine these valuable crystals, but everyone's poor, and they so either they're really poor miners, they're bad at mining, or Cobb is just collecting all the money and what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, or it's why live on this planet if there's only one resource that you can barely ever find?
Yeah.
But I think the part of the thing with the Outer Rim is they can't leave the planet.
Yeah, it's not by choice. Fair enough.
Right. But why live in that? Why live there? Why not live in Mos Eisley, right? Where you have a better chance of a better life.
But it is what it is. They have very few alternatives.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Also, another thing I like about Star Wars, maybe not so much, is they talk about planets like it's a town. So you go to Tatooine and it's one place. Right?
Yeah.
But presumably there's a whole planet you could be settling. But maybe what they're saying is that when the planet settled, it was settled here, and that's where all the settlements are, and there's nothing else on the rest of the planet. That's the only other assumption I can make. I don't know. How would you explain it?
That's kind of how I pictured it too. There might be some teeny tiny things, but there's one major hub.
Right.
For things.
Because that's the only way you could work it in this. You need some sort of centralized location to gather the resources, and
especially in Tatooine, where it's just literally desert everywhere. So it's there's not really a point to be settling anywhere else.
Because it's exactly the same as everywhere.
Yeah,
it's just desert. Yeah.
May as well settle where there's already things instead of where there's not.
I think that logic applies to the Outer Rim and to places like Coruscant, where the entire planet is a city, so it's effectively the same. But I think that's something that sci-fi often gets wrong. Is like in Star Wars, for example, there are Twi'leks, there are different species, and presumably their planets are not all so uniform, right? That, like our planet isn't. That's the equivalent of like flying to Toronto and saying that's Canada, right?
Yeah. I mean, like Star Wars has always been particularly bad for just saying, one biome is the entire planet. So Hoth is just all ice, and Mustafar is all lava. Right?
Yeah,
but you can flip that really easily, right? You can have characters visit Hoth and just be in a different biome.
Yeah,
and that could just be a southern part, or who knows how that planet. Maybe the northern parts are warmer because of how the planet's tilted, right? Like. Get creative with that.
But like I guess like there's planets we see that are like that have like forested areas, right? So presumably those planets are closer to what as Earth and have other types of biomes
like
in it.
Naboo is the closest that we get.
Yeah. Well, we also get glimpses of Alderaan before it's destroyed. I mean, the animated stuff. It is also like Earth. It's got like mountain ranges and forests and lakes and rivers.
But even there, the civilization and the cities and everything seem very homogenous, whereas on Naboo, there's two very distinct civilizations at the very least,
Right, the Gungans and the Nubians.
I do tend to think of like some of the planets as being like much smaller than like obviously like our current one too. Like I usually think of like Tatooine as being like pretty small. Like it's not like the size of Earth. Like it's, closer to like the size of a moon or like maybe slightly bigger than a moon.
Marcos, that's no moon.
Yeah.
Marcos says, I don't know if this is already talked about, but am I wrong in thinking about 99% of all the townspeople out there are dead? I presume he's talking about Tatooine. I don't know. To me, it always felt like the Old West. I think that's what they're going for. So it's not that they're all dead. It's just like it's really hard living, and that people are kind of risking it for the biscuit. And they're
risking it for the biscuit is what they say on Tatooine.
It's a classic Tatooine phrase. And they're going out there to try to make a new life, right?
Yeah.
You might be specifically referencing the townspeople in this episode, though, not just in general.
Oh, that might be true. That like it's like they're being picked off one by one, either by crate dragons or sand people. Right. And by the way, the more we think about it, it's just such a clear racial slur. Sand people.
Yeah, it certainly is.
So crazy. And like I think it's nice that they touch on that in the like they don't specifically call that out, but like Mando specifically calls them Tuskens and not sand people.
Right. Yes, yeah.
Okay, so we get to this action set piece. So there's not. Let me back up a little bit. So again, montage, bury the stuff. The Tuskens have set up these like big crossbows with harpoons, which again I like that because it's calling back to that whale kind of feel with the Leviathan and all that kind of thing. Yeah. So they set up these harpoons and they proceed to call out to the dragon. This time there's 3 of them, which seems unnecessary, but maybe they just want to wake it up. And this time they don't get eaten, and like I mentioned before,
one of them does.
Does one of them get eaten?
One guy he kind of like he trips towards the end.
Oh no! Okay, fair enough. So darn. It's also I think it's very funny that it's always the Tuskens that are out there doing that, and not any of the townsfolk.
I thought it was a team effort.
Yeah, weird how that works.
And this is the scene that I referenced earlier, where they acted surprised when the dragon screams.
Right.
They all like they specifically have a reaction shot to the Tuskens going like, "Oh no, now run!"
Right, and also there's also the cut to, and like, there's a bunch of reaction shots, but there's one specific one that I want to call out, which is they cut to Cobb's face and they do a dolly zoom on Cobb's face, which for those who don't know, the dolly zoom is typically used in horror. I think it was invented by Dan. Help me out here. Classic horror director
Wes Craven.
No,
George A. Romero.
Older.
Romero. Hitchcock.
It was a Hitchcock move, and it's this idea of pulling the camera back physically on a dolly while zooming in on the face, so that the character itself isn't your perspective to them isn't changing, but their background is warping for them, like it's like changing as you're pulling out.
It's like a dynamic close up.
Yeah. And the idea is it's typically used for horror because it's very off-putting. It's very strange look because there's literally you're seeing a dilation in the lens as you're pulling out, while maintaining the zoom on the face. So you get this kind of like shock. It's typically used a lot for like vertigo, where you like look down and they actually use it. They actually specifically use it in I think Fallen Order, where if you look over a gap and you pull out, they'll do a dolly zoom, a virtual dolly zoom of like what,
Probably use it in Vertigo, which I'm pretty sure is a Hitchcock film.
Which I was also thinking that, and I think that's when it was invented.
There you go.
So they use that there, and I think that's a kind of a classic filmmaking touch that I really appreciated here. It's again very traditional, classical, very similar to that cowboy shot. If you're thinking about classic filmmaking. So we get to the action set piece. They shoot at the dragon with the harpoons, and they try to use the ropes to pull it out, which seems stupid. It's obviously huge.
So stupid. and it's just dudes holding onto the rope.
And if you look at the harpoons, they're not attached to the ground in any meaningful way. No. They're just on tripods. Yeah. I mean, like I said, guys, the Tuskens, though they have a heritage, don't have the best technology around. Okay.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
Which makes sense why they haven't been able to kill this thing beforehand. That's why they need help.
They've just been studying it for millennia.
They've actually been worse. They've actually been feeding it and and helping it grow. So they're like, oh shit, it's not taking the bait because it didn't get out far enough. And so everyone starts throwing rocks at it, shooting it, whatever they can do to piss it off. And it works. They piss it off. And instead of charging forward, it starts shooting acid, which no one fucking knew it could do, and melting fucking people.
Yeah, it's like stomach acid or something.
I guess that's the only explanation. But
I kind of
legit melts people.
That they can spit them when they feel threatened, and it's like it'll dissolve any like.
Everyone's doing their own research here, I guess.
Yeah. It's Rachel, you're right. It's a form of stomach acid. It's something that helps them digest all the crazy, like all the sand that they must consume with a mouth traveling through the sand.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just very high potency acid.
It's crazy because a lot of people die from that acid, and they do not.
Which may be what Marcos was saying referencing there. With 99% of the people.
No.
Just like disintegrates.
No, the townspeople who got to went to assist they all got smashed. I mean, I like they celebrate at the end when they kill the crate dragon, and they're like, "Woo, we did it!" But like, so many people died. I mean, I don't know. We go back and count. It's maybe like. It looks 5 Tuskens and like maybe like another 10 or townspeople or something like that.
It looks like close to like a good half of their forces.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's risk. They risked it in it for the biscuit in it.
They risked it for the biscuit in it.
Yeah, that's right. And this time they got the biscuit in it. Yeah. Okay, so back to the actual action scene. Mando and Cobb use their jetpacks because it's like, okay, sorry, they actually do blow the charge. It doesn't do anything. It wasn't enough. Or it hurts him. It doesn't kill him. And the dragon retreats and then pops its head out of the top of the mountain and then rains acid on everyone. This is probably what we're talking about, where everyone dies. But that was, I thought, really crazy because I did not expect that part to happen. I kind of figured that the first thing wasn't going to work and then something else would happen. But this idea that it just popped out of the rocks out of this top of the mountain, pretty cool. It really gives you a sense of scale, I think, of the actual dragon itself.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of just general thoughts on the crate dragon itself and its design and it's
amazing. Yeah, it's the coolest thing in the world. What are you talking about?
Well, I don't know. Like this is, I think, pretty challenging because I don't know how much combination they use between. I would love to know combination they use between practical effects and virtual effects, but most of it's virtual.
Gotta be, yeah.
But like, when they're not really close to the eye. No, because like when they're shooting at the eyeball and stuff at the top of the mountain, that might be practical. Like they might have built like
I doubt it. They have those crazy screens that they shoot everything on, right? Like
right. But the point of those crazy screens is they're able to bring in practical effects into that space and then use the screens to build out the world around it.
You have the two actors reacting to something on the screens. The
right.
thing on the screens
is the giant
face. I can't imagine that would be a practical effect.
It looks really good, and the fact that it looks as real as the banthas, which are practical, is very impressive.
And special
I'm sure it's probably a real crate dragon.
Special toothbrush. I forgot about the bantha toothbrush.
Special toothbrush, and that was a practical effect that they made for
The banthas look really good. They do several close-ups on the banthas in this episode, like multiple of them. There's one of them with the ship flying in. There's another one before it gets eaten.
And I know we're not supposed to do this with Star Wars, but what does a bantha eat? You said the thing about there being no trees.
Womp rats.
Why does it have people teeth?
Well, we're omnivores. We eat other animals. We don't have like carnivore teeth.
Okay, they seem like an animal that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, the dewback seems to make more sense on like that's the thing. It's like I feel like Tatooine already had the dewback.
Yeah, because why would this animal have all this like shaggy fur if it lives on a goddamn desert?
Because it's cold at night.
There's no animal with shaggy fur in an Earth desert.
Is that true?
They're all reptiles.
Like
or
lizards and
Listen,
stuff.
man, this
Yeah.
isn't Earth.
Vultures.
This isn't Earth. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, okay.
Like I don't know. So the dewback makes sense. So the dewback
Sure,
is the big
sure.
giant
Yeah.
lizard that we saw that was added in digitally
Yep.
into the
It's just a big lizard.
special anniversary version of A New Hope and all that stuff. When we see it, and it like lifts it, does like a hind leg lift and stuff. We see it again. There's a dewback in season 1, and we see it all the time. Dewback also sounds like a racial slur, but like I don't know why. And
I know why, but
we're not going to talk about that. But the point is, the bantha has always been like the Sand People's thing, or like the Tuscan thing, right? But you're right; it makes no sense. What do
it just
they eat?
looks like an animal that would make more sense on Hoth than it does on Tatooine.
Yeah, I totally
right.
agree
It's
with
like
that.
closer to what's the thing that they ride on Hoth?
Tauntaun?
I thought they smell bad on the outside.
Yeah,
Right,
tauntauns.
right. So it looks like an offshoot of the tauntaun, less of I guess. Deserts are notoriously cold at night. That's my only explanation for that. But also notoriously hot during the day. So and they have 2 suns. Okay, so I'm just gonna back out of that. So they fly up. Mando and Cobb, they fly out with their jetpacks. Always fun to see jetpacks in action.
Yep.
Go and they shoot at the dragon's face from like close up, like shooting at its eyeball and stuff. And it's cool because you see Mando using his like disintegration like rifle that literally disintegrates people, but it has no effect on the dragon whatsoever.
I really liked that. I thought that was super cool. I was
Mhm.
just like, oh, it literally does nothing. Like I thought maybe it was gonna like make some, bullet holes or whatever.
Right,
but it just,
nothing.
Like, nothing.
So that doesn't work. Again, they kind of like rethink their plan. Mando tells Cobb to take care of the child, and then smacks Cobb's jetpack, producing the exact same effect that it had in Return of the Jedi.
I love that.
and so much so that they use the exact same sound effect.
Yeah, it's a bit of a design flaw. That
I felt like that was
Bang.
a little bit of a wink.
Again, but even I get maybe that one's maybe a bit on the nose, but even that one felt like it wasn't being used in the same way as like the Boba Fett.
No.
Where? Boom, and then like it's all like a comedic effect. Like this was more earnest, in my opinion. I don't know, Dan. Maybe you disagree.
I don't necessarily disagree. I just think it's being used effectively the same way. It's like I said, it's a design
It's
flaw.
clearly a design flaw.
They have all this crazy technology, but this one type of jetpack has this one feature where you could just.
Well, like the one way you could explain is that like that specific one has been like damaged, but like how would he know that? To use it in that way?
Because otherwise, if every jetpack has that feature, people would be playing those pranks on each other all the time.
Yeah. Well, I guess, but like that'd be like putting a brick on someone's speed pedal. I mean, like it's like it's hilarious, but like it's super dangerous. So no one's doing it.
You're right. It's like cutting someone's brake lines.
Yeah, like oh man, guys, guess what? I cut his brake lines. Isn't that funny? But like the last time we saw this used, it caused Boba Fett to be eaten by a sarlacc. So.
But wasn't it kind of accidental last time when Han hits it?
It was, and in fact, it happens at the exact time that Luke does that like kick and doesn't hit that guy's face, but he just still does. You know what I'm talking about? It's so funny, and I see it in the GIFs all the time.
Yeah.
Star Wars has its own charm. That's one of the charms of it for some reason.
Turns out.
Its flaws are its charms. Turns out. Anyway, so his plan apparently is to get eaten. He's doing the
Hercules,
what's the one I'm thinking of here? What's the one I'm actually thinking of? The white whale? Is that? Did you ever get
Moby
eaten
Dick.
by the white whale?
No.
I'm thinking Pinocchio.
Pinocchio is eaten by a sperm whale.
Right.
Jonah's eaten by a whale. Ahab is not eaten by Moby Dick.
Okay. Well, that's I wasn't
spoilers for Moby Dick. If you guys
spoilers for Moby Dick. He doesn't get eaten by a whale.
Read the book.
Or seen the famous movie.
Don't watch the movie. Don't read the book either. Actually,
watch the movie or read the book.
The book, honestly, the book is just like it's a bunch of details about tying knots and like there's 6 chapters about different types of whales. It's
very old school writing. It's not engaging.
My dad likes books, and he said it was a waste of time.
I wasted time.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was an entire waste of time. Like I feel like I learned something, but it was more like reading a textbook at points than it was reading a work of fiction.
You started to like learn how to do knots.
Yeah.
So anyway, Why do you guys think they had left this bantha with leftover explosives? Do you think they were like, just in case we need these extras, or like we didn't need these ones?
It was just a storage. It was the creature carrying the supplies. Right?
Yeah, I literally always thought that was the plan. Like I was like, oh, I see. Like they're just gonna load up a bunch of stuff on it, make them eat it, and then explode them. Like
why did they do that first?
I don't know.
It's smart, and they've already proven that they're willing to sacrifice banthas on a regular basis.
Right. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't do that first. Actually, that's a really good point. That's really dumb. So he gets eaten with the bantha and the detonator, and then he like flies out with like he shocks him with his like shocky stick, which is also the same rifle. Flies out, blows up the crate dragon from the inside. Everyone cheers. Yep. He's covered in green goo. Another detail I like is he lands, but it's not like this graceful landing. It's kind of like this clunky landing. I appreciate those like small details because it's like he's only had the jetpack for a short time. He's not fully trained.
Yep. Yeah, it kind of stumbles.
It's so easy to just do like the cool like one knee landing or something, but they don't choose not to do that, which I appreciate. Which Disney, man, they're like, you got to know someone at Disney's like, please let him do the superhero landing. Let him do the superhero landing. And they're like, no, we're not doing it.
No.
Like, damn. Okay, it's okay. We can do it in the next Iron Man or something.
Yeah.
And so they celebrate. Everyone celebrates. The Tuskens are carving up the carcass. It's disgusting. It is so gross. And they find a giant pearl. By the way, the pearl is huge. If there's a pearl of that size in our world, it would be worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
And apparently this is also from the extended universe. There's Crate Dragon pearls are like a thing that was introduced, and this is now it being reintroduced into canon, which this show seems to do a lot of reintroducing these outside things into canon. Clone Wars has done a lot of that. I think that's pretty cool.
It's also a bit of another reference to the whaling industry and to Moby Dick, actually. With like the concept of ambergris that you can find in sperm whales specifically.
Right.
It's this like really valuable mineral that's like some sort of mineral deposit that they create while they digest things.
Right.
And occasionally, not every time, when you are whaling and you kill a whale, you can find some of it and it's worth a lot of money.
But like, what is it? And also, why does it matter?
It's
like it's completely like,
if I remember correctly, ambergris is used in like a lot of like perfumes and colognes.
Really?
And that's why it's expensive. It's like a crucial ingredient in a lot of that.
There's no way they're still using it in that.
What? I think so.
There's no way.
Not exclusively, but I think it is still used in some.
That's crazy. How do you? No one can justify that. Whaling is evil. Don't whale.
Yeah, there's evil people out there who pay money to like shoot tigers and stuff too, though.
That's true. Poachers don't poach. Don't be a poacher.
Yeah, I did think that pearl thing was cool because it's kind of like a clam, right? In the ocean, gets sand in it and creates pearls. So it's kind of cool that this weird desert dragon does that.
This thing's got to be constantly consuming sand. And
right.
This is what it does with it. I like that. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Mando gets a giant cut of meat.
Yeah.
He like loads it onto his speeder bike. How's he gonna keep that cool? And maybe he'll freeze it in the
well, it gets really cold at night.
The carbonite. He'll freeze it in carbonite. Shut up, Daniel. So anyway, so everyone celebrates despite the massive loss of life. That's my note. Mando apologizes to Cobb for not letting him in on the plan. He returns Fett's armor to him. Cobb said it's all right, and said the armor is well earned. And I hope we cross paths again. They almost definitely will cross paths again.
You think he's going to give him the armor back when they do?
Well, that depends. There's a lot that could happen between now and then because we get to the stinger, and Mando rides off. Music swells. Everyone's happy, but we cut to a mysterious figure, and the music changes to something a little bit creepier. There's some didgeridoo in there, which I think it might be. We already know that the who's the composer for Mandalorian? It's
I forget.
Crap, what's his name? Anyway, he has affinity for some a little bit like less typical instruments. There's a didgeridoo I think that's used here.
Is it maybe it could be didgeridoo. I thought it was like an oboe or something, or like
could be an oboe. It felt like it sounded more like didgeridoo to me, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know enough about this, but it's certainly they used it's again a little bit. They changed the music here. Someone dressed like a Tusken has their weapons, as like the slug thrower and all that stuff. Yeah. He turns around and we see it's Temuera Morrison, and we don't know technically who he's playing because he could be playing technically any clone, but the implication here is that it's Boba Fett. There's no reason you'd introduce Boba Fett's armor and then Temuera Morrison into the episode at the very end and then it not be Boba Fett. He's got cool scars around his eye. he also doesn't look very happy about, like, he just looks kind of like this is clearly a villain that's being introduced here. This is like the Thanos thing from the Stinger from the first Avengers. So what do you guys think of this? This is the big reveal of this episode. Besides the actual armor itself, they bring back the actual
at least
technically the actor who didn't technically play him in the original form, but voiced him in all that stuff. But all that whatever. We have Temuera Morrison back. I love Temuera Morrison. I think he's great in almost everything he's in. I love the clone troopers. We know that Boba Fett is a clone. I've got Jango Fett here as if we're talking about his armor. This is his armor technically, and I've got Jango Fett here, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool stuff. Anywho, the point being, shut up. I know I said it twice and it sounds stupid, but don't worry about it. So,
and if you're keeping track at home, we got Jango Fett here.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. Shut up. Anyway, the point is, what do you guys think of Boba Fett being introduced here? He's alive. Officially, we're going to go off the assumption that this is Boba Fett. He's back in canon, alive. What do we think?
Rachel?
I'm so excited. I'm literally I'm really, really pumped about it.
I'm shaking.
I was really hoping it wasn't going to be like when you see that, Timothy Oliphant, has the Mando Boba Fett's armor, and then you cut to and you see the cutscene with the Jawas. I was really hoping that's like, oh man, like I hope they don't like kind of kill him off, right? Like that Boba Fett's not around.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it does seem more. I mean, like, how does the armor get out if the man doesn't get out? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. But that's the thing, you never know. Like, and maybe they're setting that up for that reason, because technically Boba Fett isn't a Mandalorian. So, maybe there's going to be some kind of thing about this now. Like, maybe he's going to try and earn his armor back or whatever. But
that's really interesting, because I guess Boba Fett technically isn't, because he's a clone.
Mm-hmm.
There is debate. Even in universe, there's debate whether Jango Fett is even a Mandalorian. We know that Prime Minister Almec says that he's not. He's like, I don't know how he acquired that armor. But we also know that he's also an unreliable narrator. He's a bad guy. He's used as like the he has his own agenda. So we don't know where Jango Fett got the armor, where the armor originally came from. We do know it's Beskar, but we don't know. Boba Fett generally doesn't do a lot in the movies. We don't have a lot of information on him. He appears in Clone Wars as a kid. He's super annoying in those episodes. I hate him. But this is the coolest. This might be the coolest thing we've ever seen Boba Fett do, and all he does is turn around and walk away.
Yeah.
I hope it bodes well for this season, and it means that Boba Fett may be more of a recurring character, and maybe even sort of the antagonist of this season. That would be very interesting to have him sort of like a cat and mouse game where Boba Fett's following the Mandalorian around now that he has that armor.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think prevents Boba from taking his armor back earlier? Why has he been on Tatooine this whole time? What's he been waiting for? Or maybe he doesn't care about the armor necessarily, but why has he been on Tatooine otherwise? You know what I mean?
I'm sure he cares about the armor. I think
it is his dad's, literally. So
I think you can write around it, make it as simple as he just got to that.
Yeah,
he just found the armor at the point at which we see him. Right.
Sure. That's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, this could just be them introducing that this is the first time he's seen his armor since he lost it. Like,
interesting. Well, because maybe he gets word that a Mandalorian is on Tatooine. And thinks, well, that's my armor then, probably, right? Mm-hmm. And then goes and investigates. Turns out there's two of them, and someone has his armor. And then he sees it handed off, and then episode 2 might very well start with a confrontation between Mando and Boba.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
And I'm realizing now it may be cooler for him to not be the antagonist and even be an ally. If Gideon and all that kind of stuff is going to come back into the fold and be part of the larger overarching story, it could be kind of cool to have two Mandalorians, one of which being Boba Fett, work together to a degree. I think it probably.
I think it works better as a. I think he's clearly introduced as a villain here. I think tonally introduced as a villain.
I don't know. Hard to say.
Unless they're trying to give you a red herring, it's possible. I think Boba Fett works better as a villain.
Sure.
He's a tortured soul. He saw his dad decapitated in front of him as a child. He knows he's a clone, right? He knows he's a clone. He grew up being raised by bounty hunters his entire life, and then was dispatched accidentally by Han Solo, right? He has no respect for force sensitive people. He hates them.
Sure.
A Jedi literally killed his father, and we know that like the whole thing with Baby Yoda is that he is Force sensitive. As soon as Boba Fett finds out that Baby Yoda is Force sensitive, he may very well try to kill him. So there's also this kind of like underlying plot idea of this person who is a foundling, right? The Mandalorian being adopted into the culture of Mandalore, right? And brought up in that world. Whereas you have someone who was a child of someone who feels like he should be attached to that culture, but is being held at an arm's length from it, and maybe wants to be included. He feels like he should be, but doesn't know he doesn't have the emotional maturity or understanding to be able to how to actually grapple with that. I think that could be a real interesting kind of like plot point that they may or may not touch on. That's pretty complex, I feel like, maybe for the
complex for Star Wars.
I think there's just a lot of things that they could do with it. So it's like I'm excited to see how it goes. Because, maybe like, Mando's trying to find people like Baby Yoda, right? Yeah. And then, maybe Boba Fett can shed some light on that, right? Because maybe he knows where there's more Jedi or maybe there's more Force sensitive people that...
Right, and like we have what's interesting also about the Temuera Morrison reveal is that it lends credence to other casting rumors that we got previous to this season. And I mean, again, if you don't want to know about any potential casting rumors for the rest of the season, I guess please tune out now. We'll close out after that. But one of the rumors was that we're going to get Ahsoka appearing in the show, and potentially even Captain Rex. And played also by Temuera Morrison, which would also be, I think, really interesting to see, to have a clone face off against another clone of like very different kind of upbringing and origin, and like this idea is, I think that's compelling. Whether we see that or not, unclear. We already have him playing one role, so he may not be playing another. But
also, it's not confirmed that this is Boba Fett.
We don't know.
To be clear, that could be Rex, right?
It could be Rex. I don't think that's Rex.
You can't discount it entirely.
It could be. It's very possible. Like we said, he could be playing literally any of a million clones, right? So,
he could just be one we've never heard of.
Right. He's like CT 654332 or whatever. Like who knows? I think we can all agree that's not probably what's happening here.
No,
but we all assume it's Boba Fett,
right?
Like 90-10.
But I think. The one thing that you say, okay, does this lead credence to the fact that Ahsoka will appear in the season? Yes, it does. And I think that Ahsoka represents kind of the distinct opposite of what Boba Fett represents here, which is this disdain for Force users, this kind of, but also at the same time being from previous Star Wars, like has context from before.
Right.
She represents the opposite of that, also from previous Star Wars, but represents this light, the shining light of, I understand this stuff. She would obviously have a connection to someone that looked like Yoda, right?
Yes.
And would feel a sense of maybe not ownership, but protecting that young life. We know that the Yoda species lives for hundreds of years, right? It's only 50 years. I think 50 years old. We know from last season, something like that. So there's like. I don't know how many, like, you have to go, like, how many years is that? I don't know how, like, is that 1 year old, 2 years old in Yoda years? I don't know. So you'd have to, like, we're decades away from seeing what, like, a teenage Baby Yoda would ever even be like, someone who can, like, speak and move around on their own and whatever. So getting Ahsoka involved really starts to reignite that whole like Jedi thing. But the problem there's a problem is because the sequel movies take place after this story. Right. So what's happening with Baby Yoda? Baby Yoda's still baby during that period. Is Ahsoka then just protecting her, like the baby at that time? It does, because the quest is to hand off the baby to other Force sensitive people. That's
right.
The purpose, right? You meet Ahsoka. That essentially solves the problem. So there's a possibility that she doesn't appear to the very last episode. I don't know.
Or she appears and he doesn't trust her, right?
Right.
You can play with that tension for quite a bit, I think.
Yeah. Right. I mean, because like they say that I have to return to a sect of enemy sorcerers or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
And that's important too because she no longer would identify as one such, right?
Right. She's not a Jedi, and she says so specifically multiple times. I'm no Jedi. I think is the exact specific.
So she wouldn't be the type of person that he would hand the baby over to.
Yeah,
maybe, but he also doesn't. He's only heard the word Jedi like once in his life. So
yeah, that's true.
And there's also only one other Jedi in the galaxy. Well, I guess at that time, Luke's new school might be up and running at that point, but it's not clear. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, they always do the thing where there's. It just so happens that other people survived Order 66.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of survivors. I mean, the point was there's thousands of Jedi.
Yes.
There's lots of potential for survivors, but even then, like, this is so past Order 66, like, because there were survivors, then they were hunted down and killed. So even the survivors are there's less of those.
Yep.
Right. The only Jedi we know of that are around this time, canonically, are Ahsoka, quote unquote Jedi, Luke, and Leia, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, and a Force ghost of Obi-Wan, and young Anakin for some reason.
And again, it's important to say that we know of.
That we know of.
They could easily create a character and have it fit into that world easily enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The galaxy's big enough that there might be a Jedi who survived and chose to sit out the Galactic Civil War, right? Okay, so there's lots of possibilities. It's super exciting. I think the introduction of Boba Fett just creates so many possibilities.
It does.
Very excited to explore that. I don't know if you guys know we have Jango Fett here, and we're gonna be covering this obviously throughout the whole season. So. Any final overall thoughts about the season? Or this episode, sorry?
Not yet. Like, I'm just excited. So I'm pumped for everything they've set up. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it was a great episode. Like I said, I've been
disenfranchised,
a little anti-Star Wars lately.
Yeah,
I would say. Yeah, you noticed. And with good reason, I would add. I think that's justified.
I think episode 9 did a particularly
8 as
poor
well.
job.
And
I'll disagree with you on that, but all right.
This episode kind of got me more back into being excited for Star Wars. For more of this specifically, I still think it's not a strong opener for the season, in that it doesn't have any narrative through line that relates to what we care about as an audience in terms of the overarching story. So I think this episode could easily have been episode 3 in this season, and it would have had the same impact, and it would have still been a cool, badass episode of TV.
That's a good point.
But it needed something more at the beginning to carry us over from season 1 into like. I'm sure there are people that are second guessing the show as a result of this. I think.
I don't know. I think this episode is strong enough to stand on its own.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I agree. I think it could have used a moment to reground the stakes a little bit. They maybe relied too heavily on the recap, like that little 30-second recap they use,
and which is great, but it doesn't touch on any of the Baby Yoda stuff.
Right.
Baby Yoda's in the episode. Cute little winks to Baby Yoda, but that's it.
Yeah.
It's great to have at the top of the episode scenes from last time where Gideon gets out with the Darksaber, but then to not touch on that storyline at all. Nobody affected by that storyline is referenced at all in this episode. I think is a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a part of it is that the show is called The Mandalorian. We know at the end of that season they leave, right? So he leaves, whatever the name of that planet is, and Navarro, and he leaves Navarro with the baby on his mission, right? So we're picking up with him, stop 1 on his mission instead of saying what's happening on Navarro, right? We'll find out. We already know that
it'll come with time.
The rest of the people that we know from season 1 are in the show. They're on the posters and all that stuff, so we know that they'll be there. This is just kind of starts in media res, which some people hate, other people enjoy. I didn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, honest, we'll see how the rest of the season goes. It really depends on how it fits in with the upcoming episodes.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess I would just say if I had one final thought, which is that I thought the scale felt a lot larger. I was marking on the claustrophobia of season 1 a little bit earlier, and I felt that this season maybe it's just a larger budget, but we were on 2 planets already in this episode and multiple locations on Tatooine, and that was not necessarily what we really saw. It was a lot of single locations, not a lot of moving around per episode in the season 1,
sure.
and it never felt like I was being closed into the venue or whatever it's called. And so that makes a big difference. I think the pacing was really spot on. despite this feeling a bit like a one-off, like you mentioned, it had hooks for me into the larger story, and obviously felt like it dealt with some long, lingering questions here, obviously with Boba Fett, which I think is very important. And then the tone, I think this is really hard to describe. The tone felt really OG Star Wars, original trilogy, between the Western homages and the use of existing world building. It felt very classic Star Wars to me. And again, it's hard to describe exactly what that means, but there is a specific feeling that Star Wars, when it's good Star Wars creates.
Sure.
And this episode did that. It recreated that feeling. And I think it deserves props for that, because that's not, our version of modern Star Wars doesn't always have that, because Episode 9, I would argue, has none of that. So, I don't see the practical effects and all that stuff, but I think a lot of it lies on writing, and I think the writing of this episode is pretty much spot on.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Any final thoughts, Rachel?
No, other than, I'm just excited for everything they set up, and I can't wait to see what's next. So,
okay. Well, on that note, we will wrap up. Please follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and head over to our website, towerofbabble.ca, to find more of what we do. And subscribe to the main feed if you're just listening to the Small Screen Star Wars feed. There is other stuff we do if you enjoy other film and television coverage. And I know this episode was a bit long, and I apologize to both Dan and to Rachel for being a long episode. But we'll try to keep it a bit shorter. There's obviously a lot to cover here. So again, I appreciate everyone for sticking around, and we'll be back with more Small Screen Star Wars next week when we cover Season 1, Episode 2.
Season 2, Episode 2.
Season 2, Episode 2. It's what I said. We'll be back then. We'll talk to you then. Bye.
Bye.